Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning into our Thursday night polling roundup. So dramatic developments on this Thursday evening for the next UK general election. We've had an opinion poll turned up showing that Reform have gone ahead of the Conservatives. Been threatening for a while. They've been neck and neck in the polls since Nigel Farage announcing standing as the or going to be the Reform leader. Some polls have had the Conservatives and Reform, within a couple of points of one another. We have a poll tonight for the seeing crossover occur between Reform and also the Conservatives. So we'll cover that in a moment. There have been a few other polls released today as well. So this intriguing general election continues. If you're enjoying our polling roundups here on the channel, please you like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much everyone for doing that. Right, well, let's have a look, shall we, at these polls. So we have had a clutch of polls being released today. The last poll we covered was more in common just here. So since then we've had people polling. This is a new one, I think, Norstat. So I don't know much about that. That's appeared today as well. We've had BMG, We Think, Redfield Wilton, and also YouGov has just appeared this evening. So sorry everyone, let's deal with this Norstat poll first though. This is from the 10th to the 12th of June, giving Labour an overall 20% lead, Conservatives 21, Labour 41, Liberal Democrats 11, SNP 3, Greens 6, and Reform 17. We covered more in common poll yesterday. Since then, we've had people polling appear. So this again giving Labour a 20% lead. It has the Conservatives on 19% and Labour on 39%. Labour have taken a bit of a hit since Nigel Farage announced he was standing as the Reform leader. Labour have dropped a few percentage points, but at the same time the Conservatives have dropped a few percentage points as well, which means that the overall gap between the government and the opposition remains about the same. Liberal Democrats are on 10% in this people polling poll, and the Reform Party is on 17%. We haven't got any figures for the SNP and the Greens, unfortunately, in this poll. That's pretty poor form in a general election. Now, I'm not sure what's going on with people polling for GB News there, but they should really be releasing, all the numbers, all the figures for all of the parties to give everyone a fair go. So very unsure what's happened to the SNP and also Green share. But you notice on that poll, Reform just 2 points under the Conservatives there, so virtually neck and neck. There was a BMG poll that's appeared as well. That has the Conservatives on 21%, Labour on 41%, Liberal Democrats on 12%, SNP 3%, Greens 6%, and Reform on 14%, and overall 20% Labour lead. Also, back to people polling poll, I'm not sure I said, had a 20% Labour lead. After that, we had We Think, which showed Conservatives on 20%, Labour on 43%, Liberal Democrats on 11%, SNP on 2%, do you get everybody, Greens on 6%, and Reform on 14%, a 23% Labour lead with that one. Redfield Wilton shows the Conservatives on an absolutely atrocious 18%. Conservatives on 18%, Labour on 42%, Liberal Democrats on 13%, SNP on 3%, Greens on 50%, and Reform on 17%. So overall, we see a Labour lead of 24%. Note in that poll, Redfield Wilton, the Reform Party is just 1 percentage point under the Conservatives. Again, virtually neck and neck. And then YouGov has turned up in the last hour or so, and this is the one that shows crossover. They have got the Conservatives on 18%. Labour are taking a little bit of a hit as well, down to 37%. But of course, still a big enough gap between Conservatives and Labour for an absolutely massive Labour majority. Liberal Democrats on 14%. And the SNP on 3%, Greens on 7%, that could account, that relatively high green number could account for a couple of percentage points off Labour. And look at Reform here, surging ahead 19%. So for the first time ever, I think in the people, I don't think it's happened before, maybe around the early 80s, when the SDP party was formed. Possibly we would have had a few polls then where the Conservatives were in third place, but it is an extraordinary development that we see the Conservative Party there pushed down to third place, and they're not all that far ahead of the Liberal Democrats, so it's not totally impossible. There could be a Conservative Lib Dem crossover as well, but the real talking point with this poll, obviously, going to be Conservatives down to 18%, Reform 19%, and overall Labour lead 24%. They get an absolute landslide with that. Conservatives obliterated, it's fair to say. Yeah, so very, very dramatic poll there from YouGov. It's only one. It could be an outlier. But you see with some of these other polls, you know, got Redfield, Wilton, as I say, just 1 point difference between the Conservatives and Reform. People polling, you know, again, just a couple of points in it between Conservatives and Reform. So it was inevitable that at some stage we would see a poll showing a crossover between the Conservatives and Reform. So there we go. Very, very dramatic developments on this Thursday evening for the general election. So the overall polling graph is looking at Wiki. Clearly, Labour have taken a hit since Nigel Farage became the Reform leader. He has pulled away some of the probably red wall voters, but voted Conservatives in 2019, went back to Labour, and now are going back to, or going over to Reform. I would suggest a lot of that drop there will come from red wall voters. But at the same time, it's evening itself out because the Conservatives are taking the hit as well. No, it's virtually equal, the hit, but, you know, in terms of percentage points, that Labour and the Conservatives have taken, and the Conservatives were already so far behind Labour that it doesn't make any difference to the overall Labour landslide or even supermajority that they could be heading for. We see Reform here lifting up. The trend lines haven't yet crossed over, but that YouGov poll, I assume, is included here, somewhere around there. We do have a poll that has crossover between Conservatives and Reform. Liberal Democrats also starting to lift up slightly as well. That usually happens with the Liberal Democrats through a general election as they get a little bit more publicity and you know, the focus is on them slightly more. So the Liberal Democrat tick up that you often get in a general election is in evidence there. Right, okay, well, interesting, isn't it? We might do another panel roundup tomorrow, but definitely be a Saturday night polling roundup, or as a clutch of polls on Saturdays. We haven't managed to do any for a couple of weeks due to me being in hospital. Yeah, I reckon we're going to have a Saturday night polling roundup, and that will be coming up for you on Saturday, obviously. Right, so if you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks so much everyone for doing that, and we're going to have more polling for the 2024 UK general election coming up for you very shortly. But for this one, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.